What we now know as church and community ministry began in 1885 in Ponca City, Oklahoma, by the Methodist Women's Home Missionary Society of the Methodist Episcopal Church. In 1913, church and community ministry began in Bluefield, Virginia, when women of the Methodist Episcopal Church South began visiting families in the hollers. In 1922, the program joined other programs to be called Rural Work. In 1939, projects were located in 28 different states, including Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. In 1972, church and community ministry became an office of the Board of Global Ministries with an executive secretary, the National Advisory Committee, and the Church and Community Workers Organization. Each entity sought to improve living and working conditions and expectation for church and community workers. While each of us are called to the mission field, the Holston Conference is privileged to have a special group of missionaries who serve the needs of the disenfranchised, work for economic justice, and seek to bring healing to a wounded and broken world. They are the Church and Community Workers, or CCWs. The role of each church and community worker is to act as a bridge connecting the church to the community and the community to the church. Each CCW is selected and assigned by the General Board of Global Ministries to serve in a particular mission field based on their gifts for ministry. Holston currently helps support 5 church and community workers, with 3 in the Clinch Mountain District and 1 each in the Appalachian and Mountain View districts. So now let's take a closer look at how God is working through our CCWs and the communities where they serve. We will also hear from some of our retired church and community workers. We asked these former and current church and community workers to share their knowledge of the history of rural work, as well as share some stories from their experience.
Part of church and community workers' history goes back to what was known as rural work. And in our area, Miss Gladys Newcomb came after she retired from teaching in the Chattanooga City system. She worked in vacation church school with youth with many things in our small rural churches, and she was really the model and my mentor for so many, many years through that. I appreciate her. Also, there were others. Luella Sherlin was a great mentor for us in those years too.
Missionaries were my heroes. When other people were talking about their movie star favorites, I was thinking about how impressed I was with the missionaries that I met at church camp. And so all of my service has been within Holston Conference. The first 10 years I was assigned to the Knoxville Cooperative Parish for small inner city congregations in Knoxville, and I was there from 85 to 95, 10 years, and then my assignment was changed to the Knoxville district, and I worked with the churches in the district to help them with outreach into the community.
I think for any denomination that has had the vision to work in mission in some very, I'd say, needy, worthwhile areas, have had to give thought to how long you can do for people and how do you get them to make change and do what they're able to do, can be doing on their own. So it's that balance between being paternalistic and giving over to others and having some kind of understanding about working with people and not for people. And that's probably a lifelong task in mission work.
I am the Executive Director of Jubilee Project, and it's in a very poor part of Appalachia. And I've worked with people in poverty a lot, but I've never lived where poverty is the culture. So this is such a new experience for me. And there's so many opportunities for ministry up there. There's so many different directions and so many needs there and lack of resources that it's exciting to me to be able to, follow God's leading and opening doors where he opens doors of opportunity, like we just had the mobile dental clinic come up because there's no dentist in the area. It's just exciting to me to have all these doors open and be able to go through them and offer things to people who don't have many resources.
I worked under the General Board of Global Ministries in New York, and I had a wonderful opportunity of working with church and community workers in the projects to which they were assigned across the country. I moved from New York in August of '86 to Scott County, Virginia. We began a thrift store there. We did housing rehab and but one of the major things I focused on was the 60-unit housing project, public housing project, directly across the street from the United Methodist Church where my office was located. It was made up of some older adults, but a lot of families with children.
I'm Mark Stransky. I'm a church and community worker serving at Project Crossroads in Marion, Virginia. Harry and I right now are assessing projects, trying to kind of figure out the people that have the most severe needs so we can start on those projects first thing this summer, and we're excited about the teams that are signing up and coming.
There's a lady in Perryville we were made aware of that had a roof leaking. Come to find out, every room in her house leaked except the living rooms. And literally the ceiling in her bedroom had already started falling. Half of it had already fallen away, and there was nothing but exposed beams. And well, she felt abandoned and forgotten. And so one of the public health nurses called me, and I made a visit. And in 2 weeks, we repaired her roof and repaired her ceiling and did the work on her porch so that her home was safe and secure. And it changed not only her life, but the folks that came to serve with her. You know, she realized that the church indeed had come to be with her, and she felt God's presence in those that came to serve and repair her home. And it made a difference not only in her home, but also in her life.
I served as church and community worker in 1958. I worked for a while in Big Stone Gap before I had my assignment in Maryville District, mostly on the Riverview Circuit, which had 7 churches. I spent much of my time with youth work.
I had a desire to bridge the church and the community, recognizing that there are so many outside of our church walls that feel very uncomfortable walking through our churches, and that they needed to know about a loving God, and they needed to know that they were also children of God of infinite worth. So all those things kind of meshed together, and that's how I ended up as a church and community worker.
One of the things that I really enjoyed most about it was the people. The volunteers were incredible in all of the counties. One of our projects was a day camp, and there was a lady in the kitchen called Miss June who had not missed a day of day camp in several years. Miss June was in her mid-80s, and she was one of the cooks. She was one that the children absolutely loved. During the time she was a volunteer in the kitchen, her son died. It was a very tragic death, I understand. And she told me later, she said, being at this camp has absolutely saved my life. It's given me a reason to go on living and to be with the other children and to have the children come in for their morning hugs. I really can see how it did impact her life like that.
Well, I'm celebrating 35 years as a church and community worker. My father was a minister here in the Holston Conference. I worked with a variety of programs, including the St. Elmo United Methodist Church, the St. Andrew's United Methodist Church, and an organization called the St. Elmo Alton Park Partners. Partners was a wonderful ministry that worked with home-based child care providers. They needed transportation. We also worked with a reading center, and then we worked to grow its ministries to Head Start, to a neighborhood reading center, and to some different elementary schools. Moved from Chattanooga to Rocky Mount, Virginia, where I am now the executive director of the Henry Fork Service Center. Henry Fort provides after-school and summer programming for children and youth south of Rocky Mount, Virginia.
The gift that the Methodist women in the conference gave in starting that work and then continuing it and financing it, and that's where church and community work came from. I remember Myrtle Delaney, who was a rural worker in the Big Stone Gap District when I was a little girl and went to camp at 9 years of age. And she worked all over the district. And I knew her later when I was in college. We just have a wonderful fellowship in the Methodist Church, and we have a wonderful connection that we touch these lives over and over and over. And we never forget it.